Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. A little later in the show, Sam Amico from hoopswire.com will join us. We'll talk about the Cavs, who have clinched a playoff spot. We begin by talking Browns. NFL meeting out in Phoenix, Arizona. The owners' meetings. At those meetings, Kevin Stefanski talked about redesigning this offense around Deshaun Watson's strengths.
Right then, it was, okay, what did you like now that we've gotten out of it? I think the nice part now is you get a break from the action. He gets to step back, we get to step back, and then we get to study what worked and what didn't. And then the quarterback will always have a huge amount of input into what we do. I think you guys have heard me say it before. There's no shortage of plays. There's many plays you can draw up, but you always want to give the quarterback stuff that he's comfortable with, because when the quarterback is comfortable with something, he oftentimes will make it work. That happens my whole career. You get to third down, planning day, and you have a list of 5 plays. It's like, all right, which one do you want? Because ultimately, I don't care. They're all good plays. They're on the sheet, but whatever the quarterback feels like he's going to make work, those are the ones that you want to run.
The other thing that Kevin Stefanski talked about, first time in his career, he's going to have a quote-unquote elite quarterback skill set. With that comes some freedom that Kevin Stefanski plans on giving Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think with all that, I think comfort in the system, that certainly comes. And the quarterback, as we say this all the time, has the trump card, because he's got the best view of it from where he is. So there were times last year where Deshaun made great adjustments to what we're doing, and he always has that ability. I think as he becomes more comfortable in our system, he'll know when and where to do that more often. A lot of times when you're playing no huddle, that comes up more often than not. When you're at the line of scrimmage, you're making those decisions. So he did it some last year. I think that will only grow the more reps he gets in our system.
And with that, let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, I think that last part, familiarity with the system and making plays off schedule, are two of the strengths Deshaun Watson brings. And we didn't get to see a whole lot last year.
No, last year, obviously, just getting his feet wet after, a year and a half long layoff, and to do it in a new system, to do it with new personnel, to do it with the new coaching staff. And the other thing, and I think a lot of people did not take into account, coming in when the record was 4-7, and coming in that situation where it almost felt like, I have to be a savior here. I have to find a way to come in, even though I haven't played football in almost 2 calendar years, and win 6 straight games for this franchise to hopefully get into the playoffs. I do think one thing the other coach Stefanski said that really should be taken to heart is, look, coaches can watch everything from a top. They can watch everything from the sidelines, but they just don't get a feel of, maybe how the game is actually flowing on any given day. We're going to do this because we think, they think maybe the middle linebacker is not paying as much attention as they do. Meanwhile, Deshaun could say, I could 100% disagree with you. I think, you may think he's lagging. I may think he's trying to bait me into a throw or two. That's why you just have to have this communication. And that's why you have to look at a player like Deshaun and, understanding how special he is, and then understanding the investment you have into him, to not say, hey, we want your input here. We want you to sit down with us. Look, if X, Y, and Z is no good, we'll just lose X, Y, and Z. And we'll look for a new, A, B, and C to add in there in its place. Communication. And as far as, trying to, communicate what you want and what's going to work best for the coaching staff, what's going to work best for the player, with the personnel involved, there's so much that goes into it. There's so much detail. Everybody thinks here's a playbook, players just go out and make plays. But if your playbook is not catered, maybe not catered necessarily, but it's not built with your best attributes of your individual players and trying to accent those, you end up with, a lot of disarray. And I think that was maybe some of the things that probably went on, during the Baker Mayfield time that he was with Coach Stefanski. And I think part of that was probably on Baker, because he couldn't necessarily communicate what he felt would work best.
The other thing that comes out of the owners meeting is Jimmy Haslam talking, and Mary Kay Cabot from cleveland.com tweets this out. No ultimatum for Kevin Stefanski in his first full season with Deshaun Watson, but we have expectations to make the playoffs, and everybody understands how important that is. Jeff, I wouldn't expect the owner to come out in March with an ultimatum of it's playoffs or your head, but I like the thought. We expect to make the playoffs.
Well, I mean, it kind of sounds like it's an ultimatum without it being an ultimatum, right? But when you go out and you spend this money, and look, I mean, the Browns, and everybody, makes the jokes about, offseason champions once again. But, you went out and you signed a starting defensive tackle. You signed a starting defensive end. You signed a starting safety. You went out and you brought back linebackers. So you have, starting linebackers. You bring in a player like Elijah Moore. You bring in another tight end, even though you had a tight end too that you were comfortable with. You saw a chance to upgrade it, so you did. And the other thing is you have a quarterback who's on a contract of $230 million guaranteed. Playoffs should be the expectation every single year. Otherwise, what are you paying that money for? We'll see. Obviously, if the tweaks between the roster, the coaching staff, and the changes that have been made there, both as far as defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator, and you see them making moves, thinking specifically about special teams. You try to do everything you can, and this is where the Browns have been good under the Andrew Berry regime. Is they get themselves to the draft, and they're not even necessarily looking for starters. You're at that point looking for depth players. And, it's a great way to do it, because if the kids you draft, if they outplay the potential of what you thought they had and become, regulars right out the gate, like Martin Emerson did, it just makes your, everything work better for you. But yes, I mean, with this team and everything that's going on in Baltimore, and, I don't think anybody thinks, Pittsburgh is there just yet. We all know Cincinnati is the beast right now of the AFC North. But you play well against Cincinnati every time you match up against them. Yes. I mean, playoffs should be the expectations, especially when, not only are you paying the quarterback that, but it's not like you have much cap space left. You're paying, there's no way to think that any chance this is a tank year, because you're not tanking anyway. You don't have the picks anyway. So, you have to go out there and you have to compete. You have to succeed. And, look, at the end of the day, it's not an ultimatum, but, it probably is an ultimatum, because if you go to the playoffs your first year as a head coach and then you don't go the next 3 seasons, it's really hard to figure how that man would stay around.
Well, Kevin Stefanski was asked at the owners' meeting about the expectations for this year's team.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I don't really think of it that way. I think about putting our team together and getting ready to play good football come week 1. Expectations for our players, we always hold ourselves to a high standard. So certainly when you get back in the building and you start working towards your goals, 32 teams want to win the Super Bowl. That'll never change. But for us, we really put the focus on the work that goes into it, and a lot of that work will start in earnest on April 17th.
And again, that's pretty much what he has to say. You're not going to come out and say we expect to win the Super Bowl, because there are steps to that.
No, and look, and Coach Stefanski, look, this has never been his thing. He has never, put out, wild acclamations, any of that. And, I know a lot of people probably give him a hard time for it. But his team, it's get better every day. It's compete, it's succeed, all those types of things. He never wants to put those expectations out there. Maybe rightfully so, with some of the media members he's got to deal with on a daily basis. But I think you can see a little gleam. I think you can see a little gleam back in the eye here. And we probably haven't seen that since 2020. Knowing, what's come in the door, knowing the type of players, not only on the field they brought in, but also the type of guys that these are as far as being in locker rooms. And when you're talking about a player like Marquise Goodwin's played in a Super Bowl, a player like Juan Thornhill has been into 3 Super Bowls. You go out and you get these guys for a reason. You want guys to, because sometimes things can get lost from the coaches to the players. But when other players come in, and a guy like Juan Thornhill, who's been in the NFL 4 years, says, I don't really know anything else but going to Super Bowls and hopefully winning them. You want your players to basically, soak that up like sponges. You want them to say and hear that and say, yeah, I mean, that is what we want. That is what I want personally. And I think that's a lot, that's gone on here, is, bringing in different type of players and bringing in players that are coming from winning locker rooms.
Well, the other thing that happened out at the owners' meeting, an interesting meeting between Kevin Stefanski and Odell Beckham Jr. Certainly no ill will here. Big hug. And Odell and Kevin Stefanski out at the owners' meeting in Phoenix, Arizona. Mary Kay Cabot, though, tweets this out. Browns will not be meeting with Odell Beckham Jr. Except to say hi. They're happy with the acquisitions of Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin. And I get it. And I I get it. That's all. Yes, I agree.
Well, I mean, if you combine between Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and David Njoku, you're talking possibility minimum 400 targets next year from Deshaun Watson. We all know Odell. You know, we've seen him in his prime with the Giants. We've seen him here with the Cleveland Browns. Where would Odell even fit into that? So, number one, as much as, you know, they say, you know, hey, you know, good luck. It's nice to see you. You know, glad that you're healing up and you're going to be ready to go. What part does Odell want of this? You know, I mean, you know, he's going to come in and maybe fight to be wide receiver 3, maybe fight for 50 targets. That's not the type of guy Odell is. There's a spot out there for Odell. I'm not sure if I even know where it is yet, or anybody truly knows where that perfect spot is for him. But for the Browns, look, you've danced that dance. It didn't work out the way you had hoped it would. Yeah, it's definitely best to, you know, in that scenario, hey, let's shake hands. You know, nothing was ever personal. It's not, and it shouldn't be. But now a reunion of any kind, I know I don't want to cover it. I know many other people like myself don't want to cover it. Look, great player. But, you know, I got to see it, you know, locally with the Giants. I got to see it with the Browns. You know, he's a really, really difficult guy if things aren't necessarily going his way and the team's way. You need both things to happen. Because, you know, there's times where he was successful on the field, but the team wasn't winning, so he wasn't happy about that. Or if the team was winning and he wasn't getting his, he wasn't excited about that. For the Browns, you know, I think, you know, and especially after a year of covering Amari Cooper, who probably said about 7 words total the entire season, yeah, I think we're all good there.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about what to expect from Elijah Moore. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, this is Gary from North Canton. Everybody's clamoring about how the Browns don't score enough points. Last year, in 11 games with Jacoby Brissett, they almost averaged 24 points a game. That would put them at the top 10 in the NFL, only within 5 points per game from Kansas City, which was top at 29. I'm trying to figure out why they don't think they have enough assets on the team already. Everybody says we need to get more wide receivers. We need this. They averaged almost 24 points a game with Jacoby Brissett. And don't you think that with this preseason that the Browns and Deshaun Watson can't do better than that? We don't need to spend any more money on offense. We need to fix the defense.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, to my way of thinking, the offense is going to look drastically different. And if you're going to spend $230 million on a quarterback, you give him every weapon you can to try to score 35 a game.
Oh, no question. And the thing is, I mean, if you look at some of what they were paying last year, you know, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, those two guys combined were making $9 million or whatever it was. Neither one really contributed anything. Elijah Moore makes a little bit north of $1 million. Akins, you know, a little bit north of $2 million. You know, Marquise Goodwin, you know, the official numbers aren't in yet. You figure that's going to be vet minimum, most likely. So most likely between those three guys, you're paying less than you were paying for Kareem Hunt and for Dearness Johnson. But look, now you can do this, you know, and there's going to come a point where, you know, hey, Deshaun, we're going to have to take some of that money and allocate it somewhere else, and you're going to be responsible for making up for that. But when you can get a guy like Elijah Moore in here and you still have 2 more years on a former second-round picks contract, I mean, it would have been a major flaw to themselves if they didn't do this move. They got that room better, younger, faster, and, you know, to not basically do everything you can to help your $230 million investment pan out. you would be foolish to. There's still money left over if they need it. Keep in mind, they've only rolled over one contract to this point in Deshaun Watson's. There's plenty of other guys they could have done it for, they can do it for, if they feel the need for a certain guy to come in here. But nothing really else is going to go toward the offensive side of the ball. You're hoping maybe here you can get another cheap vet or two here in on defense. Contribute some of those draft choices to there, as well as maybe possibly running back. But yeah, I think offensively, I think they're done. And I think the biggest key is there were so many guys on this roster who were maybe viewed as a wide receiver 4 possibly. Now they're, you got a whole bunch of guys fighting for wide receiver 5, fighting for wide receiver 6. And to this point, none of them really have earned reps. So, whoever wins that route, if you even get the opportunity to get reps, we'll see. But between obviously Coop and Donovan Peoples-Jones and Elijah Moore and Goodwin and David Bell, that's probably going to be 98.9% of any wide receiver reps you're going to see this season.
Along those lines, projecting performances of receivers that change teams, this from NFL.com. So Elijah Moore with the Jets in 2022, 16 games, 37 receptions, 446, and a receiving touchdown. 2023 numbers will be better in capital letters. Stellar route runner. Moore pairs well with Amari Cooper, third-year pro, can move around the formation, ran 46.8% of his routes from the slot last season, and owns the natural talent to take advantage of coverage rolling toward Cooper. The other asterisk to his numbers in 2022 was Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White. Deshaun Watson and his ability to extend plays right into what Elijah Moore can do effectively.
And I also think, you've got Elijah Moore coming in here now, definitely with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. It seems that, and look, what Garrett Wilson did last year for the Jets is phenomenal, but it's not the norm. First things first, as a rookie, you were not supposed to go out there and even put up numbers like he did, yet alone where week in, week out, he had no idea who his quarterback was going to be. And then for Elijah Moore, in the time you've been a New York Jet, they drafted Wilson, signed Alan Lazard, signed McCole Hardman. So it's one of those things where it's either A, maybe he did burn a bridge or two while he was there, but B, they didn't do anything to mend it. And, they maybe, lost faith in the talent that he was. I think a lot of people are pigeonholing him into slot, which I think was kind of what happened and maybe where his aggravation was a little bit last year with the Jets is that's not what I am, and that's not necessarily all that I am. And I proved that at Ole Miss, and I kind of proved that as a rookie. For the Browns, look, you can, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, both have fantastic footwork. Both are incredible route runners. You can put either one of them in slot. You can use David Njoku in the slot. There are a lot of things you can do with Elijah Moore. And I think for a guy like Elijah Moore, knowing he's getting out of that situation, granted it probably was Aaron Rodgers that he was going to be playing with, but now you get to go play 2 more years as you're searching, for your first big contract in free agency with Deshaun Watson, who himself has a lot to prove to this league. Elijah Moore is geeked up and gassed and ready to go.
Well, Kevin Stefanski talked about Elijah Moore and what he has seen and how to use him effectively.
His size kind of he must be a slot. He's won plenty on the outside as well. He's the type of player you just want to get the ball in his hands. And I think if you go back to his college tape, there was a ton of down the field throws. There's opportunities to hand it to him, throw it to him over the middle, throw it to him outside. I mean, I just think there's no shortage of ways that you want to get him the football.
And Amari Cooper's a great route runner. Donovan Peoples-Jones does things with contested catches. Elijah Moore and Goodwin are guys you want to get the ball in their hand in space because the defense is going to go, this is a problem.
He would be by far the most difficult guy to tackle in the open field for the Cleveland Browns. There's no question. Elijah Moore kind of got that ability like when he was a kid and they played tag, he was probably never it. But you go back to the college tape at Ole Miss, and I think it was like 14 for like 240 against Alabama. And every single one of those guys on the field for Alabama is an NFL player. You showed the part, looked the part. I still, I go back to that just to think that it was, 42, for Elijah Moore in 74. And it still just kind of makes you shake your head a little bit, trying to figure out, where were any other NFL general managers as this was going down. But this guy's going to come in. He's going to be special. It gives you life after Amari Cooper. A lot of people talk about, is Donovan Peoples-Jones going to get an extension here? What would the money possibly be? If that doesn't necessarily work out, monetarily, Elijah Moore is not a bad guy to have with Amari Cooper in 2023. In 2024. Just gives you tons of options. Elijah Moore is going to be a special player, and Browns fans are really, really going to like him. He's not necessarily Antonio Brown, the personality, but he's definitely kind of Antonio Brown, the player.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus talk about extensions, guys that might be extended by the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you doing? This is Chad from Sarasota, Florida, a longtime Browns fan. I just wanted to see if we could get some actual footage on the talk show from Dave when he says things like Jedrick Wills has been known to not finish plays, or when we're talking about the corners last year not being used properly in Joe Woods' defensive scheme. We always have these comments bagging on these players of not doing certain things, but the show never backs it up with any in-game footage or anything like that. It would be really good to see that. And, yeah, go Browns. Love the show, but just wanted to add that insight. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, we've shown a couple of the all-22s where Jedrick Wills didn't finish blocks. Try to dig him up again. As far as cornerbacks not being used, if you're asking Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome to play zone coverage, which they did a lot, that's not playing to their strengths.
No, and my guess would be, the caller probably is not a big social media guy. There are a lot of instances where you're looking at tape and, like for me, it's like, did I hit pause? Because 71's not moving right now. And you look down and you realize, no, we're in slow motion. 71 just, decided to stop moving. Those things are there. They do exist. And again, zone coverage. And it's certainly, part of it also is you didn't have a true nickel. So you take somebody who's got really great man ability as an outside corner, and he's got to play nickel, and not always thrilled with it, and rightfully so. If I was better at one thing, but I was asked to do something else that I wasn't as good at, I'd probably be a little bit frustrated too. But these talkings, they're look, and nobody wants to stand here and do this and speak and act like you're bagging on people. I mean, these things are real. You notice them the more you watch, and if you watch the same rep 3, 4, 5 times, you find subtle nuances, and you find things that aren't working, or certain games where you basically end up banging your head because it's like that's 3 times now, and it just seems like he kind of just stopped. And for me, the way I was coached, the way I was always taught to play is the one thing you never ever do on a football field is stand still, because it's a great way. The line was stand still, get run over. So you don't ever want to do that. So you see those type of traits. It's a little alarming. But, it's always tough to have to be critical when we do what we do, and there's always going to be some backlash.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is I'm not one that usually will – I've been, accused of being a propagandist for the Browns. So I don't tend to show the negative unless it's pretty egregious. And so it exists. There's quite a bit of it. We've shown it before. I don't want to keep showing it and harping on it, but it's been on the show significantly. All right, along those lines, predicting fifth-year option decisions for every 2020 first-round pick. This is by Pro Football Focus. For the Browns, Jedrick Wills, fifth-year option amount, $14,175,000, playing time escalator. Pro Football Focus prediction exercise. Wills offers very high floor as a pass protector, earning 3 straight grades. of 67.9 or better in that facet. And Cleveland should gladly push an extension decision out one more season, off-season, as they spend big across the rest of the roster. I've said all along, I think Browns fans that don't like Jedrick Wills are viewing him with well, he was picked 10th overall. And I think he's kind of a middle-of-the-road left tackle that you hoped and expect would be better than middle of the road.
This is difficult, and I'm pretty sure we've had these conversations in the past. But for me, and saying you're ready to commit $15 million to Jedrick Wills for 2024, the first thing for me is, and everybody, oh, well, you move on from Wyatt Teller. When's been the game that anybody has talked about Jedrick Wills the way we have talked about Wyatt Teller after some performances Wyatt Teller has had? So for me, that's where it becomes, it's tough. And look, you can say he's young. You can say he made the transition from right tackle. But this is now 3 full seasons. And, to me, and granted, the Browns for next year, you would have Wills this year. For next year, your earliest pick is in round 2. It's a serious question of, well, if you pick up the 5th-year option, are you committed long-term? Or are you going to give him a 5th year now at $15 million to show whether or not he truly is a top 10 left tackle in his league? I haven't seen anything that tells me that that's going to be the case. And if you're going to go pay him $15 million, it's going to cost you a player or two. And, for what maybe those other players are making, would it be better? Would it be a little easier if you could just maybe, start thinking about maybe what's next at left tackle?
Fair enough. Again, you got to have the answer before you make the decision on Jedrick Wills. But again,
even still, if you don't pick up the 5th-year option and Jedrick Wills goes out this year and kills it, you know what, son? You called our bluff. What's it going to take?
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years, what's your deal? And maybe that would be the thing. Maybe, maybe the incentive of, this is it. If we don't see it this year, maybe that would be the incentive. But to give him the 5th year, for what we've seen, and is it above average? I'd say it's a little bit above average. Is it something that I'm ready to commit $15 million to, or a long-term contract extension to? No, I'm just not comfortable with it.
All right, so let's take a look at the salary cap. We've talked about it a couple times. So Marquise Goodwin's contract is not in this total. The Browns have just under $8 million in cap space. Jack Duffin doing the math for us. So the question I have for you, do you think they try to add a veteran defensive lineman to this mix? If so, who do you like?
For me, and looking at what they've done to this point, Deshaun Robinson, 330-pound guy. He's just a bold. Yes, he's most likely only going to play on first down. He's only going to play in short yardage and goal lines. But look, somebody's got to do that work. Dalvin Tomlinson and they have a great relationship. They were teammates at Alabama. Deshaun Robinson, look, we're in now, week 3 of, free agency. Obviously, the offers aren't necessarily pouring in for him. That would be a guy, and if you told me it was 1 year, 2.5 with maybe some incentive in there, I think that would be the perfect guy in the middle, because he essentially is different from the rest in the fact that he's just kind of a guy who's going to plug, absorb double teams, allow the other 10 guys to, do their job, basically, avoid any muck or mire that linebackers or safeties got to run through like we saw last year, trying to get the ball carriers. For me, it would be a simple, cheap, slam dunk signing and probably really close this off and wrap this up for them.
What do you think about a veteran edge? You've got Okunrankwo, who hasn't played a lot. Alex Wright, still kind of developmental. I'd like an edge guy. Maybe Melvin Ingram, if you can get him for $3 or $4 million.
Melvin Ingram would certainly be interesting. Isaiah Thomas, look, I mean, this is a new life for everybody now on that defensive line. And Isaiah Thomas, at times had a couple of flashes last year. He's a guy who plays well in run defense. I think he's capable of making this roster. You still got some draft picks, and the other thing is, if you're looking, to go the vet route, for a vet to come in here, one thing to look at is, well, if Alex Wright improves, you signed Okoronkwo, you've got Myles Garrett, how much is my role there? I'm not saying no. I'm definitely not passing on the opportunity if it's there. But if it's one or the other, for me, it's definitely defensive tackle, because I think you could probably get a little more bang for your buck at 74 and 98 with an edge than you probably can with another rookie defensive tackle that we've drafted guys in that range who we are now trying to replace.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and take a look a little bit about the draft, what the Browns might do with some of their picks. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, everyone. As well as Andrew Berry has done so far in terms of upgrading player talent, we can't forget the additions of Jim Schwartz and Bubba Ventrone being vital and important moves this offseason to improve our coaching. Can they emulate Jim Callahan's ability to coach up the O-line by doing the same on defense and special teams? Great show as always, and go Browns.
Appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, that's the million-dollar question. If they do what the Browns think they can do, there are going to be guys that improve just because they're being coached and asked to do specific things that they weren't being asked to do before.
There's no question about it. But the other thing that comes into this is, when you have 2 years in a row, with Joe Woods, where 1 year was really good, then it started to fall apart in year two. Jim Schwartz has been a top shelf defensive coordinator in this league for a long, long time. And, whether it's, going all the way back to Albert Haynesworth in Tennessee or Ndamukong Suh in Detroit, and he's coached great players. He's had successful players. He's had great defenses. This guy walks in the room. It's automatic respect. It's there from day one because he comes in with this resume. And this is why you make a move like this. This is why you go get a first-time defensive coordinator. You want a guy that's going to command the room, command the unit. And you certainly get that with Jim Schwartz. Bubba Ventrone, just a different type of guy. Obviously very, very into what he does, very animate, very, a guy who did this in the NFL. And that's the only reason he had the NFL career he did is because he was willing to be the guy, who got dirty, got down, did the tough stuff on special teams that, not a lot of guys, when they get to the league, who, well, I was an All-American. Well, that's great. Well, here you're a nobody, and you got to go cover punts. Where a guy like Bubba Ventrone, yes, sir, coach, no problem. How many people do you want me to run through? Yes, sir. And that's what you look for. You need a mix of every type of guys. You need guys to understand what their roles are. Bubba Ventrone, he's going to treat his guys like gold. And they're special teamers, yes, but they're vital at what they do. And, to go out and already get one guy from the Bears that had already played with him before, obviously brought back Jordan Kunaszyk. You brought the kid in from the Falcons who's got a great reputation. You bring these guys in and, you give them money, you give them a home, and you say, look, you guys maybe aren't the biggest stars on Sunday, but your roles are just as important as everybody else. And we need these things done, and we need them to be done correctly because one slip up here, one slip up there, and, somebody takes a punt return 45 yards and flips the field, now you put your defense in a difficult position. You want all three phases of the game to be as good as they can be. And they saw the opportunity to upgrade both with the hires of Schwartz and Ventrone.
So this is from ESPN.com. Filling the needs of teams without a first-round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. For the Browns, biggest needs, linebacker, defensive end, defensive tackle. Best prospect fit at 74, Yaya Diaby, Louisville. Can't have enough pass rushers. Diaby coming off breakout season. Tested well at the Combine, 4.51 40. Leaping 10 feet, broad jump 6'3", 263 is his size. What do you think the Browns, as we mentioned, there's not a glaring hole right now. They've kind of done a nice job of patchworking. What do you think the Browns do at 74, 99, wherever it is? Do they trade up? What do you think they try to address?
For me, because the question would be, look, I think I'd really like to get a third safety in here. But the question is, do you want to give that responsibility, to a rookie, especially someone that's going to be drafted 74 or 98? The one position for me that nobody really seems to want to talk about is what is the situation at running back? And look, I'm okay saying Jerome Ford is part of this running back room, but we're talking about a guy with 8 carries for 12 yards last year. This is a really good running back class. Normally the Browns are active in a positional group that is good and is deep is usually something that appeals to the Browns. And the other thing, it's a conversation that nobody ever wants to have. And if Nick Chubb plays another 5 years here in Cleveland, we'll all be ecstatic about it. But you have to start thinking that, at some point, there could be the aftermath of, a different running back in Cleveland. There's guys like Sean Tucker from Syracuse right now. Nobody knows what's going on. He hasn't been able to work out. He's got to go back out to Indy for a combine recheck medically. Great player, versatile, can do both ways. Kenny McIntosh, Georgia, he's a guy that can contribute as a receiver, as a runner. I think they need a little more juice in that running back room right now. Maybe you add a veteran closer to the draft because that market doesn't seem to be doing much right now. But for me, that's key. And look, Edge, to get one of these young guys, and even when I said at 42, I think you can get a guy on an athletic comparison level to Myles Garrett. I still think there's a guy that you can get athletically pretty close to Myles Garrett, either at 74 or 98. And if you can take that chance, and look, even if he's a one-trick pony, and look, the kid from Louisville, that might be the case. Even if they're only a one-trick pony right now, it's definitely worth investing in, even if it turns out to be a guy that you're going to give maybe, 12, 15 snaps each and every week as they develop. I'm more than okay with that.
Yeah, and again, you want to get guys that can be on the roster 3 years and eventually move into contribute, so you don't have to go back into the free agent market and plug another defensive tackle or defensive end or fill in the blank. Guys that can contribute at some point in the next 2-3 years.
No question. You got to get guys in here. And this is what you do when you set this up the way the Browns try to do, where you're getting to the draft and maybe not looking to draft day one starters. You are taking guys and saying, well, look, he's got a wart with this part of his game, or we need him to be 10 to 15 pounds heavier. So you're either going plug and play, which means you're drafting guys who are high 23 years old or almost 24, which the Browns usually shy away from. But so then you've got to start looking at guys and saying, well, look, he fits everything we have. We like him a little heavier. He doesn't have as much experience playing on the inside shade of the outside tackle as opposed to the outside shade of the outside tackle. Things that you understand. You're bringing a guy in with specific things you need to work on, and hopefully he grows in as a player.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Everybody have a great day.
Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check out Locked On Browns podcast. Always good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavs. They have clinched a playoff spot. Not play-in, playoff spot. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers in the NBA. The Cavs have clinched a spot in the NBA playoffs, not the play-in, but the playoffs, trying to lock up that 4th seed in a first-round home series. Head coach J.B. Bickerstaff talked about the young Cavs and making it to the playoffs this year.
Our guys have bought in to, something bigger than themselves. It's unique for a young team, to do that at such a rapid pace. Typically young guys are so worried about figuring out themselves that the team is secondary. We've got a bunch of guys where the team is the primary thing and the only thing. And whatever individual awards, rewards, glory, all comes because of the team's success, and our guys have bought in and committed to that.
And with that, let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. And Sam, that's a valid point. I didn't really think of it until I heard JB say that, but this is a young team that plays together well.
Yeah, and he's right in the sense that is pretty unique. A lot of times, like he said, young guys are busy trying to figure out their own games, figure out the league. Now they get to figure out the playoffs. But the good news is they've done this now for an entire regular season, kind of come together. And he's right. Coach Bickerstaff's right in the sense that, look, if you want individual honors and rewards and glory, that generally comes when you play for a winning team. If you're a really good player on a losing team, those things tend to not come. So they're staying within the team concept mostly because the players are seeing that it works and they're winning and they're getting places. And, the individual honors are always nice and they will come as you continue to do that. So it's been like I've said before, the Cavs are about where they expected to be at the beginning of the season, and maybe even a little bit better, even after that Donovan Mitchell trade, with the way that they've been able to come together as a young group.
So the Cavs can clinch that number 4 seed with a win tonight at Atlanta. They play the Hawks tonight in Atlanta, and a Knicks loss to Miami tomorrow, or they can just beat the Knicks when they play them Friday at home, which would clinch the 4th seed as well in round 1. It's going to take a collapse for the Cavs not to be the 4th seed. It's kind of what I'm getting at. What do you think JB Bickerstaff wants to see these final games of the regular season? What do you want to see? I think the Knicks, it goes one of two ways. Either you try to send a message or you play the Cleveland Charge from the G League. There's really no there's no in between there.
Right. Right. It'll be interesting to see which of those they choose. And I guess a lot of it depends on, what the Knicks do within the next few days and what the Cavs do against the Hawks. I think a lot of it right now, Dave, is the Cavs are kind of eyeballing that number 3 seed at this point, which isn't obviously a huge jump from 4 because you still only will have home court advantage in the first round, presumably, if you get the 3rd seed. So, but I just think that, you want to go into the playoffs with some momentum. And it's a delicate balance because you want to have momentum, but also you'd like to lock up a seed, at least home court advantage in the first round without, risking injury and playing your starters too much, give them some rest before the playoffs. So it's going to be a delicate balance. I would imagine by the end of the week, after that Knicks game, the Cavs will know whether or not they can get the 3rd seed. I'm guessing by then they will have pretty much locked up the 4th seed. I think that they've locked up the 4th seed, even though it's not official yet. I don't think they're going to finish any worse than 4th, but I think that they would like to make a run at number 3, and there's certainly a possibility there. I mean, the Sixers have some tough games coming up, and the Sixers are in 3rd right now. So I think they're more likely to try to get that 3rd seed than to back off and play the Charge guys, at least within the next 5 or 6 days.
Well, to that point, so this is how they could get the 3rd seed. You mentioned Philadelphia. They have an extra game. They have 7 left. The Cavs have 6. So if Philadelphia wins 4 of their remaining 7, and they play the Celtics, they play the Bucks, they have a tougher go of it than the Cavs do. Philadelphia wins 4, Cavs have to go 6-0. If they win 3, Cavs have to go 5-1. If they somehow go 2-5, the Cavs can go 4-2. The reason being, the Cavs lost the game that they had, I think it was a 13-point third quarter lead. So the Sixers, even though they're only a game and a half up on the Cavs, they have the tiebreaker on them.
Yeah, so you really have to look at it like they're 2.5 up on them with very little time to go. Philly's going to have to probably, play a lot worse than they're expected, even though they have a tougher schedule to close out the season than the Cavs. So, there is a possibility you get the 3rd seed, but at the same time, your first round matchup probably isn't going to be that big of a difference if you have 3rd or 4th. 4th, you could face the Knicks. 3rd, you might face the Heat or the Nets. So you don't know. I mean, to me, if I'm the Cavs, I want to avoid the Heat because they have a ton of playoff experience and they've got big name players in Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero. Those guys are going to be, they've been to the playoffs before. They're an experienced group. So, whatever seed, to me, if you're the Cavs, where you can avoid Miami in the first round, is the one you want to get. But most likely, if you're just, all other things aside, most likely they'll finish 4th, and that's really a quite an accomplishment when you consider the fact that they underwent a major facelift by adding Donovan Mitchell and having to adjust all of that. I think they have a lot to be proud of going into the playoffs, regardless of the seed they get.
So the Cavs are 9-2 in their last 11 games. They have won 4 straight on the road. They're still sub 500 on the road for the season, which means they're one of the better home teams. That's why that home court advantage in the first round is so important to them. I think it's 30-8 they are at home currently. They're still 500 on the road for the season. How big of a concern of it is that road record? They just don't seem to play the same.
I don't think it's a huge deal. Generally in the NBA, your role players are going to play better at home than they do on the road. And that's generally, historically, the case, and I think that's certainly been the case with the Cavs this year. Look, in the playoffs, you don't need to win 4 on the road or 5 on the road in each series. If you can get 1 on the road, you can end the series quicker. If it's a first round series, if it's a second round series, you could potentially steal it. So, once you get, let's say the Cavs do get to the second round, you're going to have to win a road game. And I think that they're capable of doing that just based on the regular season. Most NBA teams, you look at the defending champion Warriors, have been the worst team on the road in the NBA this season. So I think that the Cavs, the fact that they're around 500 on the road is a good sign actually going into the playoffs. So yeah, it's vital. We've heard Charles Barkley always says the playoff series doesn't start until somebody wins a road game. And guess what? That's often the case in the NBA. So yeah, they're going to have to steal a game or 2 on the road once they get into the postseason, the Cavs.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, a look at what one of the high-profile national basketball writers thinks about the Cavs, Evan Mobley. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Zach Lowe for ESPN, national basketball writer, wrote a 10 Things About the NBA column. And one of the things that he started off with was just Evan Mobley's development. They're using him more as a facilitator from the post, shooting screens that can turn into a powerful weapon needed outside of Mitchell and Garland's pick and rolls. He also said earlier in this he's on his way to averaging 20 points and has extended it to a nice pull-up game. Mobley has never really been in a sophomore slump, referring to this year. He's coming. The numbers may not show it, but Mobley is on track to be a two-way superstar. Sam, if you watch the Cavs play closely, you can see him developing a lot of confidence on the offensive end of the court the last month. And I think if he becomes that two-way superstar, that's what elevates this team into the elite status.
Without question. You know what you're going to get from Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell most nights. This really Mobley's kind of the, I don't even want to say third wheel because he has the potential to be, 1A with Mitchell and Garland. So really giving them big three. And he's really shown that to me, and I think to the entire NBA since right about before the All-Star break, but he has really been good since the break, which is, probably the last 5-6 weeks. He's really showing flashes. And I like what Zach Lowe wrote about him being a facilitator. Had a wonderful pass the other night, a lob pass to Jared Allen for an alley-oop. And really, when Mobley came into the league, not only did you like his ability to score and his size, but he just always seemed to make the right play with the ball. And, it seemed like it took him a little bit of an adjustment once Mitchell got here. I think that's natural for a big man when you have two dynamic guards in Mitchell and Garland. I think it only makes sense for a young big guy like Mobley to kind of find, how and where do I fit? How do I get comfortable again? I agree with Zach Lowe. It wasn't a sophomore slump, but it was an adjustment for him. And he's come along very well and showing that promise that he did, probably the first 3 months as a rookie. And I really think Mobley's playing his best basketball right now and just showing what the future can be. And yeah, we're just talking about offense there. He's always been a force defensively, and he continues to do that. So really promising signs from Evan Mobley as the season goes on and as his career goes on.
Yeah, and he's shooting the three-pointer better. He doesn't need to go out that far. If he can come out and hit 17, 18-footers, he's a matchup problem because he's quick. He's quick and he can jump fast.
For sure. He's a quick leaper and he's, you're right. I don't think it's necessary for him to go out and hit threes. I don't know that the Cavs really, expect him to be able to do that. But, it never hurts to try one every once in a while if that's the only shot you're getting. But yeah, the mid-range game out to about 18, 20 feet is probably as far out as he needs to go because he's so impactful closer to the basket.
So along those lines, these are untouchable players on every NBA team, players who should never be in trade talks from the Bleacher Report. And for the Cavs, they go Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. When the Cavs were in pursuit of Mitchell last summer, they made Garland, Mobley, and Jared Allen off limits. It's certainly possible all those still retain untouchable status along with Mitchell, who has been spectacular. I would add Jared Allen to that mix. I know it hamstrings them a little bit in what they can do, but he and Mobley together are developing a chemistry that, again, in a short series will be a matchup problem. Most teams have one guy that can do that. You think of Embiid. Who's the other when they're playing off each other real well?
Right, and that's just it. And, Jared Allen, it's hard to find guys who can be productive offensively who don't really care if they get the ball. And that's Jared Allen. He's not out there posting up, looking for the ball, complaining about touches or any of that. He is fine with his role, and he plays his role very well. And you don't want to give up on a guy like that. The first three guys, absolutely. Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, they're off the table. And you're right, Dave. Jared Allen should be in there because of his unselfishness, because of how well he gets along with his teammates, and especially when you factor he and Mobley in together defensively. There's a reason the Cavs have the top defensive rating in the NBA, and it comes down to Allen and Mobley, and you remove one of those guys, it's just not the same.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Congratulations to the Cavs for clinching playoff spot. And just like one player that I think has made them successful in making it to the finals. If we get a guy like a DeMarcus Cousins that can hit the three from the outside, he's a beefy guy. The Cavs is not a soft team, but I still would like to see some kind of enforcer. And it'd be great because Boogie been working out. He can hit the three. And I think he can be a difference maker if we reach that second round. Again, thanks for taking my call, and have a great day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. It's nice of DeMarcus Cousins' agent to call and make a pitch. Yeah, he'd fit in nice. I just don't know that they're going to make a move at this point in the year.
I don't think they will. I've been a big fan of Cousins, particularly last season, from what I saw from him when he played with the Bucks and particularly the Nuggets at the end of the year. I'm surprised he's gone all season without being signed. He worked out for the Lakers probably in November, December, somewhere in that area, and they decided not to sign him. But veteran player who can, could fill in 10, 12 minutes a game and give Allen and Mobley a breather. Yeah, I'd be all for that move, but you're right, Dave. They're probably not going to make a move right now because there's so little time left before the playoffs to integrate a new guy.
Yeah, I do like the thought, though. It's a well-thought-out idea and a guy that I think would fit in without question. All right, before I let you go, J.B. Bickerstaff, talking about the next step for the Cavs after clinching that playoff spot.
We're not a finished product, right? And, just the question about where we started, we've got bigger places to go. And this is a start for us to be able to clinch a playoff spot. But, as we think about this and as we put this team together, we all have one end goal. And, those end goals don't come and happen overnight. So we've got to continue to get better. We've got to continue to grow. Coaches, players, everybody has to continue. And that's why we say we're not a finished product.
And Sam, Kobe Altman, when they traded for Donovan Mitchell, said we don't view this as this year, it's the beginning of a runway. Having said that, I don't want to see them satisfied with making it to a playoff series. Go out and see how far you can go.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. They're pleasantly surprised, I think, with home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs, and probably are either right on track or even a little ahead of track. You think about it, if the Nets hadn't traded Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, they were the hottest team in the NBA in January. So the Cavs may not be the fourth seed had those two guys stuck around and everything worked out, which we all kind of knew it wouldn't, but at the time it seemed kind of scary. So it's the Cavs are on course, and you're right, Dave. Go into the playoffs with the mindset of a spoiler. If you can get past the first round, the Atlanta Hawks 2 years ago, nobody expected them to get to the Eastern Conference Finals because they were a young team. And the Cavs certainly have that ability and that potential to do that. They have the talent. And once they get into the second round, assuming they do, they can play with, we've got nothing to lose because nobody expects us to go anywhere beyond this. So it is a great start to what should be a real rosy future, to steal the words of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver on the Cavs. So they probably need another transactional phase before they can start talking championship, but that's okay. I mean, most teams that don't win a championship this year are going to need that. So they're well on their way with a real nice young core.
It'll be fun to watch as they develop and try to chase that championship. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. As always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Sam.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff on the Cavs and the NBA as a whole. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.